Okay, everybody, welcome to today's talk. We have a special guest joining us today. This is, what is today? Thursday, June 12th, here in Las Vegas. What's the temperature outside? Hot. It's hot. Okay, what does that mean?
Over 100.
Is it over? Okay, it's over 100. It's 10 o'clock. And let's see, we have a special guest and we have somebody new here.
We have no ocean breeze either.
We have no ocean breeze. What is the temperature in California?
70.
70 and clear?
70 and clear.
It was 90 degrees at 6 this morning.
Okay, it was 90 degrees at 6 this morning. Okay, now, first of all, we have an introduction to make. So, Catherine, can you come up here, please? Come on. Come on, Catherine. Come on. Everybody has to do this.
It's required.
Has to get on. So we have a new summer intern. Have a seat. So this is Catherine. She's our summer intern. She just finished her sophomore year at Coronado. She's on the lacrosse team. And so what are your goals here? Now that you've joined Larson.
I don't have any goals yet.
Okay. So Catherine is going to be helping Sherry do a lot of projects. Next week we're meeting with the courts, the specialty courts, and a whole bunch of people, the specialty courts, the judges. Okay, Scott, would you tell Bill to take care of his shoes, his safety shoes?
Oh, yeah.
So we have meetings with the specialty courts, and the idea is that attending Larson will become part of the sentence, so it will be mandatory for people in the specialty courts. So the good news is that's how important it is for the courts, the specialty courts, to help undereducated people get the skills they need to obtain stable and meaningful employment.
Are you
Yes.
talking about community service?
No.
Okay.
Talking about when you get sentenced to 1 year house arrest or drug court,
Okay. House arrest.
drug, DUI, veterans, women, something, and youth. We're not going to be, I don't think we're going to be dealing with youth. So anyway, this is Catherine, everybody.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
I got them.
Hi.
Anything else you want to say?
No.
Okay.
I have some questions for Catherine.
Okay.
I would like to know, do you guys still use your memorization book at home?
I think my sisters do.
Okay, so you don't.
No.
So can
Did you take one with you?
Catherine,
Yeah.
could you guesstimate about how many of those poems you have memorized?
Not a lot.
What about the range of difficulty? Like, you can do the nursery rhymes, like
Yeah.
and any of the more difficult ones? Can
Maybe if I saw them.
Here's the good news.
Joining us on Friday.
She'll be here tomorrow. She'll be here tomorrow. Okay.
All right.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Catherine. Look forward to seeing you around here.
Welcome.
Okay, so that was the warm-up act for our special guest, who is a friend of mine. I've known Sterling since, I think, 2007 or 2008. He's been here in Las Vegas for a long time. Sterling is an inspiration to me, and I think to everybody who comes across him in both the boxing world and just in, what are the good behaviors that you need to have. So, Sterling, why don't you come on up here, please? Get to walk down the center aisle. Okay, well, welcome to Larson Training Centers. This is Sterling McPherson, and Sterling is going to talk about his life experience. He grew up in Ohio, how he got into boxing, probably talk about some of the people he works with, and then is here to answer any questions, and then Sherry's going to bring in pizza, and we're going to do what we usually do. Okay?
Do I get some?
Right away. Let's go to bed.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see how it goes.
See how it goes first.
Okay. So, Sterling, tell us about
California pizza.
what?
Who said that?
What was that?
Pizza.
Oh, somebody's here. So
They're on
Yeah,
live
you're on the air.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're live. The whole world.
I gotta watch my voice.
Yeah. Okay. So, Crystal, what was the question?
Where is California's pizza?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. That's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
It's in the mail.
It's in the mail.
Okay.
Okay. Sterling.
All right. Where do we start? Where I'm from? I'm from Ohio. I grew up in a place called Niles, Ohio, which is those are some small towns. We always like to pick a big town where people might notice that name. Youngstown. Okay. Youngstown. So I'm 3 cities over from Youngstown. Grew up there in Youngstown. Played football and tried to play basketball. I tried to do a number of things, but I was a pretty decent baseball player.
How many brothers?
Sisters? How many brothers and sisters? 9 of us. There was 9. There was 9 of us. 3 sisters and 6 boys. Like I said, I really didn't do much. I love sports and I love basketball, but I wasn't really big enough to perform in those. Our school was an all-American conference school, and they had some pretty big guys there. But I really liked the challenge of being a football player because I saw it on TV, and I liked it, so I did it. I tried to do it, let's put it that way. And during all that period of time, I was a friend of mine had come to me one day and offered me to come to. We played on the same baseball team in the summer. And he said to me, he says, his dad was going to take me home. He says, before you leave, he says, I want to get my workout in, and you want to hang out and watch me work out? I said, what are you going to do? He says, we got a gym in my house. I said, a gym for what? He said, a boxing gym. I said, you're a fighter? He says, yeah, we've been fighting. Me and my brother have been fighting for the last 2 years. He says, you want to come watch? So I went downstairs and watched them in the cellar, watched them fight, box and stuff. And I kind of took a liking to it, and next thing I know, I was practicing with them like before we went to baseball, and I really got into doing that because it was something where I could match up with even Steven with someone instead of going up against a guy 220 or 180 pounds, one of them kind of things. So
And how big were you?
I was in high school about 140. About 140.
What do you now?
I'm not too far from there. I try to keep myself in pretty good shape, but I stuck around that weight category pretty much so throughout my amateur career. I always used to tell people would ask me, oh boy, how many amateur fights do you have? And I always tell them, I had 150 amateur fights, and nobody ever really kept track of all that until you actually went to the AAU and you got into the Olympics and stuff like that. Because most of the fights were smoker shows,
What's that mean?
Smoking while you're working.
No, smokers are just fights where you're not in tournaments. You're just you pick this guy, or so coach picks this guy over here, and those are smoker cards. So I ended up in a number of smoker cards, but the smoker cards were great because I really learned how to be a pretty decent amateur fighter at that time because of these guys, these 2 guys. They were Irish guys, and they were really dedicated guys. So I used to box with them in their cellar. So I learned a lot in the year and a half or so with these 2 guys. And the next thing I know, they were telling me, a guy told me one day, he said, listen, so we're going to go down to Wheeling, West Virginia. And I said, where the hell is that at? He said, way down in West Virginia. They got horse races down there. We're gonna fight down there. So I went to Wheeling, West Virginia, and I fought down there. I fought a couple of times down there. And next thing I know, they had these tournaments. They were going to have these tournaments. And every time you went there, you got $25.
And this is what
It's
year?
oh, God, this was, I'm going to wild guess to tell you, 71, 72, because the Olympics was in 76 when everybody went to the Olympics, and I didn't. But those were smoker cars, and I went there. So what ended up happening, me and, you remember a name, Boom Boom Mancini from Youngstown?
Yeah, of course.
Me and
Best fighter
Raymond.
ever.
Yeah, me, Raymond, and Harry Arroyo, we all come up together.
Very good.
We all come up together. Youngstown had 5 guys win world titles back there. I mean, there's probably one city in the United States that had more champions than anybody. Youngstown did. So we used to go on these smoker trips, and one day I decided, because I was a hustler in high school, one day I decided, why don't we take our $25 and put it in a pool and see who knocks their guy out the fastest. And everybody went for that idea, right? Well, that ended up about 12 or 15 times that I won that tournament. I won it. I kept collecting the money. So these guys, and you know, you got open class and amateurs. You got open class. You got novice class. The guys that just start out. So I think it was like when you got to your 15 fights, you had to go open. So when I had to go open, now naturally this competition was a lot more stiffer. You know what I'm saying? So I bailed out of that tournament after my 14th fight. I bailed out. But amateurs was a great relief for me. I come to Vegas, and I think it was 74, 75, somewhere around in there, 74, 75. They had the Olympic trials here at the convention center at that time, and I won my first 3 fights in the 76 for the 76 Olympics. I won my first 3 fights here. I thought I was off to the races to go to the Olympics that year, and at that time, during that period of time in the 70s, there were so many fighters across the United States at that time. You couldn't, like, they didn't have a lot of hotels here then, and they weren't paying for amateurs to stay here, you know, paying guys. So you had to go back home. It was easier to fly you back to Youngstown for $50 than to keep you here and pay $100 for a hotel room. So we went back. In those days, we didn't have a wash machine or a dryer in our house, so I had to go to the local laundromat to wash my clothes. And I was going to wash my clothes that next morning when I got off the plane, and some lady ran into my car and almost pushed me into a creek. And next thing I know, my car was leaning over, close to going into the creek. And I got out of the car, and so the lady asked me, was I okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine, no problem. You know, I thought I was fine. So that evening, I went to use the bathroom, and I went to urinate, and it was all blood. I said, geez, man, what the hell? I said, what the hell's going on? You know, so I went to the doctor, and come to find out, I had a growth on my bladder. And when I happened to hit the steering wheel, and it erupted. That's what happened. So that knocked me out of the Olympics to go to the Olympics. So
Who did you beat that win?
The Olympics.
Who ultimately went in your place?
Let me shut my phone up. Howard Davis. Howard Davis won the. In fact, Howard Davis won the. In fact, he won the Olympic gold that year. Him, Sugar Ray. I think they had like. God, they must have.
Leon Spinks was there.
Yeah, Leon Spinks, Michael Spinks, Howard Davis, Sugar Ray.
They always get a title shot when you win gold medal.
Pardon me?
They'll give you a title shot. Did you win a gold medal?
If you win a gold medal, well, it's not a guarantee that you get it. You're right. Majority of the guys do. If they win a gold, if you do get lucky enough to win a gold medal, you somewhere down the line, if you stay to it, you would normally get a title fight. That's true. Yeah, that's true. But all of those guys, that 76 crew was a tremendous crew, and I'll tell you how great they were, because two of the best fighters during that time didn't even make the Olympics, and that was Tommy Hearns and Aaron Pryor. Yeah, Tommy Hearns and Aaron Pryor. Neither one of them
didn't make the team.
They didn't make the team. That's right. In fact, I was with Tommy about 2 weeks ago. Ray Leonard had a charity event in Santa Monica, and I always used to tease him because he got beat twice by Aaron Pryor in the Columbus. In Columbus, you know, every summer we used to have what they called the fairground tournament, the fairground, and there would be over 100,000 people in Columbus at this fairgrounds, and that's where most of the top amateurs went during that summer. You would fight different guys and fight very high end. I mean, we're talking about high end guys: Sugar Ray Leonard, Ray. What was the kid's name? Randy Shields. A lot of people don't know. Randy Shields was a white kid out of. I actually think he grew up in Charleston, West Virginia. Randy Shields, but he lived in California. He beat Sugar Ray Leonard twice at the fairgrounds in Columbus, Ohio. So anyway, I went through all of that stuff in my amateur career, and I really actually totaled out. I totaled out before I turned professional. I had 25 amateur fights. I never lost an amateur fight, but I would tell people when they would ask me, because I wanted to be a big shot, and when they would ask me how many amateur fights you had, I had 85, and you would think, because of the knowledge that I got from growing up and with the kind of fighters that I was working with, you would think that I had a high caliber of fights like these other guys did, but I didn't. I only had 25 amateur fights, and I was really shocked that in a real sense that when I started getting into high-end competition, and believe it or not, you can bullshit yourself only for so long in boxing.
In life.
Yeah, well, in boxing you can. I mean, it's a con job anyway. You got to con the other guy to do it and make him do what you want to do anyway. But it's a con job, and if you live with that con job in your head, sooner or later it's going to backfire on you. You know what I'm saying? It's going to backfire. You tell yourself, you can tell yourself all day long, I can beat Sugar Ray Leonard. You can look at him, you can look at him, you can look at him. And the real world is you can't. And that's just the way it is. And you can't beat him. But if you keep believing that, there's two sides of that now. You can convince yourself that you can beat him, and you may not beat him, or you can convince yourself that you can beat him. And guys, I don't say it's luck. I don't believe in luck in boxing. I really don't, because anything you throw, you would tend to hit this guy with it. I don't believe in that. When guys say he hit that guy, they knocked him out, he got lucky that night. There's no such thing as luck in boxing. There's no such thing. You either you train to do that. You know what I'm saying? You really train to do it. So I really believe that during my growth period in boxing, that I got away with a lot of bad mistakes that I was making in boxing. And it wasn't until I actually got in touch with a guy named Eddie Futch. I don't know if you ever heard that name before. Mr. Futch had saw me one day. I fought at Caesar's Palace, and he said, you know, you can do a lot of good things. He says, you do a lot of good things, but you really need to understand how to fight. And I looked at him and I said, really? I thought I could fight. So one day he told me that I was going to box at Caesar's one day, and he says, you know, I'm gonna meet you at Caesar's. Instead of coming to Johnny Tacos, you meet me at Caesar's Palace. And I said, okay. So I went to Caesar's that day, and Jesus, right, the parking lot. This is in the 1970s, if you remember. The parking lot was filled. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I said, what the hell is going on here? All these cars are loaded up. I said, oh, man, Larry Holmes must be training over there. I said, Larry Holmes wasn't. No, Larry Holmes not training there today. So when I went inside, Mr. Futch hadn't got there yet. I went inside and I said, geez, there must have been 2,500 people in that old pavilion where they used to have the big fights at. And I went inside there and I said, geez, all these people in there, what the hell are they waiting on? So this one guy come up to me and he says, you training here today, Sterling? I said, yeah. I said, oh, Eddie told me I was going to box with some guy out here. He says, oh, you must go box with Alexis. I said, Alexis who? He said, Alexis Arguello. He's training here today. I said, Alexis Arguello, who is he? He says he's a pretty good fighter, sir. He's a pretty good fighter. He's really a good fighter. I said, okay, let's see what this guy's made out of. Wow. So but this guy Aguelo was at that time was a featherweight. He was a featherweight, 126 pounds. I was a lightweight. I was pretty strong for a lightweight. I was 5'10" and a half, 5'11", and Aguelo was 5'10", 5'11", same size, same height as me. And boy, I'll tell you, I went to the locker room and I come back out, and the crowd was erupted. And Johnny Taco walked up to me, and he said, the trainer, he has a gym here, it's a famous Johnny Taco's gym. He said to me, he says, Eddie told me he was going to be a little bit late and he wanted me to help you out until he got here. I said, okay. He says, by the way, he says, that crowd out there loves you. I said, oh, really? He says, yeah. He says, didn't you hear him cheering? He says, that's for you. I said, oh, no shit. He says, yeah. He said, that's for you. I said, oh, geez, oh, man, that's fantastic, John. I said, how did they know me? He says, Sterling, everybody knows you. Don't worry about it. Everybody knows you. I said, oh, damn. So next thing I know, Aguelo walks out of the dressing room, and oh, my God, the crowd erupted. It was crazy. I said, I'm looking at this guy, tall, thin, he got a thin guy. I said, okay. Nobody told me that he was a world champion at that time. Nobody told me that. Nobody said that to me. So next thing I know, the rounds had started. Mr. Futch showed up. The rounds had started.
This is just sparring or what?
This is just sparring. Headgear on and the whole ball of wax, right? You can never believe to see 3,000 people see us boxing in a gym, right? And I'll tell you, I come back to the corner in the first round. I said to Mr. Futch, Jesus Christ, I can't move this guy. I was trying to move just to feel him and touch him and see, get a feel. You know, the first round, you feel a guy out. You heard that before, feel a guy out. Every time this guy hit me or threw anything, it was, I mean, he was killing me. He was like hit on the arms. He was just a thin guy, but he was very, very strong. And I realized in that first round, I couldn't fight. All that tough guy and big time shit back in the amateurs and all that. This was a real guy.
He was beating you down.
This was a real guy. This guy was for real. And I said to myself, I said, okay, this is called real quick here. This is take real strong measures to figure out how to get the fuck out of his way. told Johnny Taco was yelling from the corner. He said, that fucking right hand, use it. Go do this. Go do that. And I'm thinking to myself, every time I tried to do something with him, he countered me with a right hand or he countered me with a left hook. And I said, Jesus Christ, I can't get away from this guy. This guy, and he was stalking me. He stalked me. If you ever watched the Aguelo fight, he stayed right in your face. He stalked you, and you make a mistake, he would kill you. He would kill you. Well, I decided to listen to Taco. I could see, like, it looked like I could hit this guy with right hands. And Taco kept hollering from the corner, throw that right hand, throw the right. And I said, oh, I'm going to take a shot at this guy. And I threw a right hand at him, and he come over the top with a left hook. My headgear went that way. My mouthpiece went that way, and I went this way. And I said, geez, I'm down on the floor. It's quiet in this loud-ass place. It's quiet, real quiet. And I said to myself, okay, what do you do now? Stay down, get up. What are you doing here? What's your next move here, buddy? I said, I'm going to get up, beat this motherfucker to death. I said, I'm going to beat this motherfucker. So I got up, but my headgear had snapped. It broke. The chin straps broke, right? So Mr. Futch, I come back to the corner, and I told Mr. Futch, he said, no, that's it. He said, that's enough for today. I said, no. I said, no. Give me some grease. I'm going to get it. I said, no more of that. I said, Mr. Futch, listen, when I get paid, I pay you, right? He said, yeah, well, he says, if we ever get there. I'll never forget him saying that to me. He said, yeah, if we ever get there. I said, don't worry, we're going to get there. I said, just give me some grease me up. And
what is the purpose of that?
Grease is really so you don't get cut.
Really, your fish slide off.
Headgear is really, it's not a protective thing, you know, it's just really for you not to get cut before a fight. That's what it really is for. So I ended up going, me and Aguelo, that day, me and Aguelo ended up going 6 rounds that day. In fact, the last 2 rounds, what he did was he boosted her. He went the guy from the corner said, "Ooh, boo," or something like that. I couldn't remember what the hell he was talking about. Boo, 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 boo. He meant, when he raised his hand like this, he meant 5 minutes. The rounds are normally 3, and he went boo, 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 and he went like this. 5 minutes. Mr. First said, "Oh, they want to do 2 more rounds." I said, "Okay, no problem." So I'm thinking to myself, just stay close to this guy. Don't get too far away, because every time I got away from him, he was able to use his leverage against me. Believe me, that day, Aguelo raised me. He raised me that day. Well, when that session was all said and done, over with, my life changed that day. My life changed. My morning started with, instead of 3 or 4 mile runs, my mileage changed to 7 to 10.
Wow.
My exercise program, after I trained, my 2-hour training, my exercise program went from 25 minutes to 2 hours. I would do 1,000 sit-ups, 1,500 push-ups, 1,000 straight knee bends with a 35-pound weight on my back. All of my conditioning changed. Everything changed. So now let's take you forward. I'm into my...
Well, before that, now what was going through your mind when you were doing these workouts to keep going?
Well,
That's a big change
I
overnight.
realized that the only way that I could ever fight at a high level is that my body had to be in terrific condition. I couldn't compete knowledge-wise with high-end guys like that, because these guys were very smart. And at that time, I really realized that it wasn't about just fighting; it was about being smart. And these guys like Aguelo and those high-end guys were really, they're very smart people. They're not stupid. They're not just fighters. And when you hear these people say, "Oh, these guys are just banging away and they're this, that, and the other, they're out there swinging," no, they know what's going on. They know what you're getting ready to do. They know when you're going to do it, and they know what they want to do when you do it. Make you do what they want you to do.
And would you say Tyson is the same way, or was?
Yes, he was.
So he had a smart in the ring.
He was very smart. Tyson was very, very smart. Very. It wasn't just the punching power. You got to be well conditioned. You have to be a well conditioned guy and you have to be on top of your game to be able to do these things that you want to do. And Tyson was really a master at the game. He was, as a stalker, yes, you would look at Tyson and say he's a stalker and he's just a mow you down kind of a guy. But he wasn't. He wasn't just a Joe Frazier type guy. He was
one of the best trainers in the world.
He was very educated on where to hit you, when to hit you, where to put you in position for him to hit you. He knew exactly where you were going to be. And for him to hit you, he knew. So these are the type of things that fighters, when you see these great guys fighting, and today and my dad told me this when I was growing up, when he used to tell me how great Joe Louis was, and I thought when I saw Muhammad Ali and when I saw all these other great fighters come along that Joe Louis and those guys couldn't fight. Well, Joe Louis was a very, very smart guy, very intelligent fighter, and that takes you outside of the realm of boxing. It takes you into other things as well. But the object was always the con job, and that's why what you see today in the past, what you saw is when you see a mismatch. When you see a mismatch, it isn't that the guy the guy that's bad can't fight. It's that this son of a gun is just tremendously far more smarter than he is, and that's just the real world. That's the real world. But me and Aguelo got back together again. We got back together a couple of different times after that.
Now you weighed more than him.
No.
Oh.
No,
you did.
We were well.
For your
at that
first
time,
time.
the first time we were he was a featherweight, and I was like probably 32. Fighting
So
like,
how many more pounds did you weigh than him?
probably 4 or 5.
Okay, so not a lot.
Not a lot. No, not a lot. But he was he was educated. He was smart.
Technician.
Yes, he was. He was a very good technician. And he just you can't say enough. That's why he's what we label him today is one of the all-time greats that ever lived. And I got a real education that first time when I actually met him. But the key to me and him later on, me and Aguelo probably boxed 3,000 rounds in my lifetime. I boxed 3,000 rounds. At least that.
Wow.
At least that. But it wasn't. It was about. Yes, it was about my ego, and he hurt my ego. It was about. I believed that I could beat him. When whether I convinced myself that I could do it or not, I believed that. But I learned a lot from believing those kind of things too, because those beliefs can come true. They really can. It's just something that you develop within your own self. If you no matter what anybody else tells you, you don't have to listen to them. You show them. You show them as example that you can really do this. And I'm saying that to say that down the road, me and Aguelo come back together again. I think the next time I saw him, I had 15 professional fights, and it was a funny thing because Johnny Taco called me instead of Eddie Fudge that day. Johnny Taco called me. He says, "Hey, guess what?" I said, "What's going on?" Johnny called me like around 9:30 in the morning. I'm at the gym at normally 11:30. And he says, "Hey, guess what?" He says, "Your boy's back in town." I said, "Who's that?" He said, "Alexis. He was looking for you." He remembered me from that great left hook or whatever he hit me with. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. He remembered me from that. So they get him back out here, to get that kid back out here. So Johnny says, he says, I can't wait to see the look on his face when he sees you this time. I said, "What's up? What's going on?" He said, "No, I just want to see how he's going to respond to you this time." So Eddie had said to me when I got to the gym. Eddie said to me, he says, "Listen," he says, "now listen." He says, I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking. You're going to go out there. There's going to be a lot of people out there at Caesar's Palace, and you're going to try to take this guy's head off. I know exactly what the game plan is in your brain. He said, "But let me tell you something. Don't do that." He said, "Because this guy here is a constant professional. He's still the same guy that you've seen before. Remember that." I said, and I'm thinking, I ain't listening to nothing he's talking about. This is called get even time. I'm a 10-round fighter now. I'm a 10-round fighter. I'm undefeated in 15 fights. And now I want to show him, Alexis Aguelo what I'm made out of this time. So Eddie said to me before the bell rung for the first round, he said, "Now listen," he says, "come here." He grabbed me by the face mask. He said, "Come here." He says, "Now listen to me." He says, "I'm 84 years old, right?" I said, "Yeah, you're 84. He says, "Now listen," he says, "I've been everywhere. I've done them all. I had the best fighters in the world. You're no different." He said, "Now listen to me. If you go out here and you attack this guy," he said, "he's going to wake up. You're going to wake up and this," he says, "you may not like the ending, but I'm telling you," he says, don't try to do nothing crazy with this guy. And you no matter what anyone tells you, if in sports or whatever, you got an ego, and that ego is that conversation ain't gonna change the ego. It just isn't. I don't care what he was gonna say that day. It wasn't gonna change what I'm thinking in my brain, right? And I said, well, so the first couple of rounds were good. So I come back, but we weren't really doing a whole lot because, I'm cautious with him now. I know to be cautious with him, and he's cautious with me because he felt me in the first 2 rounds. He felt me. He didn't feel the same guy, that he had 15 fights ago. And he don't know that now. He don't know I got 15 fights. But he knows in the first 2 rounds, he knows that guy's different now. He can tell real quick that I was different. And I said, okay, I'm gonna check him and see if he does a couple of those things here and see if I can set him up. And I set him up, and I hit him with a right hand, and the headgear went that way, and the mouthpiece went that way, and it was joyful. It was a joyful thing. It really was. It was a joyful thing. And, you know, but after that, we'd only box a few rounds. We wouldn't box many rounds anymore. He would, you know, I'd come in on the tail end of so many other guys, or the first one. A lot of times he would put me first if he was boxing 3 or 4 other guys. He'd put me first. And the one thing that I come away from that whole thing with the fact that now I lost this guy who could really teach me. I lost him. I said, boy, I'm not getting the rounds that I want to get with him, because we used to do 7, 8, 10 rounds at 5-minute rounds. You know what I mean? And those rounds were very knowledgeable for me. And that's where I really learned. That's where you really learn how to fight. When you hear these guys, they talk about sparring partners. You heard that term before, sparring partners. When you're a young guy and you're coming up and you're boxing with Muhammad Ali, or Larry Holmes used to box Ali. All those great young guys that come up box with Larry Holmes. Yeah. But the key is to learn from those old guys and see what you can pick up from them. And I blew that opportunity with trying to get even with this guy. So I learned a valuable lesson during that period of time, but it also taught me a tremendous amount in my growth as a fighter. I have to tell you that Aguelo was without question. I boxed with a lot of guys. I boxed Duran. I boxed.
Wow.
I boxed so many of the top guys. I used to go to. I would go to Detroit, Croc Gym, Tommy Hearns, Hilmer Kente. I boxed all of those guys back in Detroit. I'd go to New York. I'd go to Gleason's gym in New York. And Eddie used to take me to all these different cities around the country, Chicago, various different places. And that was my growth as a fighter, to go to these different places. And that's why when someone says to me, or he said to me, my trainer said, "Oh, you're fighting so and so and so and so." And I used to say to Eddie, listen, there's 2 things I want to know. How much am I getting? And how much time do I got to get ready for the fight? That's it. I don't give a shit who he is, where he's coming from. It didn't make a bit of difference, because these guys that I went through in that growth period was the greatest time of my life to actually learn as a fighter on how to fight. And I thought I ended up with 34 professional fights. If you go online, I got credit for 20, I think 22 or 24, because in the 1970s and 80s, what happens is if you go to like Tijuana, I fought 4 times in Tijuana.
No sanctions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't get credit for the fights in Tijuana on BoxRec. Kansas City, Oklahoma. Only person that ever got credit for fights in Oklahoma was Sean O'Grady. But if you in certain states that weren't sanctioned, like you said, sanctioned, you didn't get credit. You didn't get credit on. But we didn't know anything about no BoxRec or Fight Facts or anything like that, you know. But some writer had to send the fight into BoxRec or Fight Facts or something like that for you to get credit on your record for those fights. So I ended up getting docked, 10, 12 fights, somewhere in that
But then
vicinity.
again, if you get knocked out, they don't know that either, right?
No, they know.
Although know that part.
The
They'll know
news, that news spreads real fast. That news.
Now, you told me about when you took Tyson to China, of what it was like over there when he would show up to give these demos or to see the kids fight. How was it in China compared to here?
Well, China doesn't really have what we have. They were not. They're not. They were never boxing orientated. Yes, they recently with Tyson going there. Recently, they just enlawed the fight business. They didn't have a professional boxing program in China.
Large.
Yeah, what do you call it? Muay Thai and other things. But when I took Tyson to China, I took him there and I made a deal with the Chinese government for him to become the ambassador for boxing for the Chinese government. And
this was what year? 2000.
2000. I'm going to guess 2008. Wait a minute. 7 or 8, 2007 or 8, somewhere around there. Somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere. In fact, we went to when we got to China, we went to Beijing, and we were going to Tiananmen Square. We were going to go to Tiananmen Square, and one of the guys come over to me and he says, "Listen, Mr. McPherson," he says, "you know, I got to tell you," he says, "I know we actually promised you guys a lot with Mike coming here. He would see this and he would see that." I said, "No problem." I said, "No, we're fine. It's not a big deal." And he says, "Well, you know, we're going to go into Tiananmen Square, and you know," he says, "I'm really disappointed in the crowd." I said, "Oh, really?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, you know, we didn't have a lot of time to really advertise or do a lot with this, with this thing. You know, it was short. You know, took us a little while to get the contracts together." I said, "No problem. Don't worry about it. We're going to see Mao. Mao is resting, and he rests in Tiananmen Square in like a glass booth, okay, in Tiananmen Square. So when we get out of the cars and we get there, God Almighty, just for miles you can see people. And I mean, just incredible. And the guy says to me, the guy comes back, we get out of the car, and the guy says to me, he says, "I told you," he says, "boy, you know," he says, "we just had another couple of weeks." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Really? There had to be 600,000 people in Tiananmen Square." Wow. He says, he says, "Listen," he says, "this is a neighborhood." He looked at me and goes, "This is a neighborhood." I said, "Jesus Christ, you mean you didn't even advertise this?" And he goes, "No, we didn't have time. We didn't have time to advertise." 600,000 people came to see Tyson in Tiananmen Square.
That many? Without advertising?
Within about a 4-day period.
Damn.
Yeah, 600,000 people.
That's nothing over there.
Huh?
That's
Yeah,
over there.
that's exactly right. But the Chinese now they've had gold medal winners there and stuff like that. In fact, Bob Arum just signed one of their gold medal winners. But they're not professionally orientated there. They're just actually getting started to get into the professional ranks. But the kids are not. They really need a lot of teaching. You know.
How many kids would show up
at the gyms? Oh God Almighty! I couldn't even begin to tell you. They took us to like 5 or 6 different provinces, and I wish I got it on my computer, but I wish I could show you it was unbelievable. When the guy actually came in and showed me and Mike on the computer, he says, "Well, when we go to this province and this province and this province, here's how this is going to work." And he showed us the people line up like a football team lines up, to do their exercises and this and the other. Just hundreds of thousands of these kids. Mike looked at the guy and says, "Wait a minute," he says, "are those people?" We're looking at the guy and says, "Those aren't real people, are they?" He says, and the guy says, "Yeah," he said, "Yeah, they're real, Mike." He said, "They talk and they walk." But it was insane. It was the most insane thing you ever see. But see over there, they're really getting into it. As you see in the United States, we are fading in a real sense in boxing. We're fading, and they're what we were when we in the 1930s and 40s. They're hungry. They want it. They want it, and and our guys, they rather, I mean, listen, if I had it all to do over again, don't get me wrong, I'd love to play tennis, I'd love to play golf, and make a lot of money, and your longevity is long, right? But these people, they're starving to death. They want to win, like we used to do here in America. Our fighters are not eager to get to the gyms, or take advice from anybody. They think they know it. They let's put it this way: they were like me.
Yeah.
They knew it all. They knew how it was going to work and how you were going to deal with this guy and this guy. They knew it all. So that's why I think our boxing business is in turmoil. It's in real turmoil here.
And who's going to be good in the next few years, or what do you see happening? Middleweight.
All of the weight class. Well, the one thing about boxing is somebody comes from somewhere here. Whether like we went a long stretch when Ali left, we went a long stretch when Larry Holmes left. Joe Louis left. We went a long stretch. There's stretches that when Sugar Ray Leonard left, when those great fighters, Duran, Leonard, Hearns, when those guys left, we go stretches and we find, and now all of a sudden here comes this guy Mike Tyson from the Catskill Mountains in the Catskills. So, there's always going to be, I always believe, there's always going to be someone that's going to come out of somewhere.
You think UFC is going to overtake boxing in popularity?
I don't, there's always that argument because it's like, because it's fighting, it's fighting, but both of these two, and I don't, maybe you guys do, but I don't call it a sport. I don't call boxing a sport. I don't see anything sporty about a guy coming home with 18 stitches over his head and he's got 2 young kids at home. I don't see anything sporty about that. Baseball is a sport. Basketball is a sport. Football is a sport. These are sports to me. This is actually, kill or be killed, and that's the way I've always looked at boxing. But to answer your question, the MMA is the ultimate street fight. Although, and I've always been for guys that were wrestlers in high school, guys who took karate and to help learn how to defend themselves against bullies in school and stuff. I've always been for that, and I'm really happy to see guys get paid for doing what they do, because way long time ago those guys could never get anything. They could, it wasn't in play for them to get anything. So I'm happy to see them guys get that. But as you need in sports or singing or something, you need stars. They're not developing stars. You may hear about a guy for 2 weeks, and it's not sorted out yet. They got a long way. Remember, boxing's been in existence for over 100 years. I mean, you're not talking about something that just started. So you're looking at something that's, yes, they're on television. Yes, people are gravitating to it. They're gravitating to it. But you gotta have stars. You look back in baseball. You can sit around and talk about Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays. We can sit around and we can talk about Will Chamberlain and Bill Russell and Jerry West. In all other sports, you can talk about great athletes years ago. You just don't talk about UFC guys. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you go to barbershop, I was always told by my grandfather, if you want to know anything about a guy in sports, go to a barbershop. Go to a barbershop. Barbershop people, there's barbershops and grandmothers. Grandmothers in barbershops. If you're a star, grandmothers know you.
Yeah.
If grandmothers don't know you, you ain't no star. That's really. I mean, that's real simple, right? Real simple. Grandmothers know stars, and grandmothers don't know these guys. Grandmothers know. You know, grandmothers know Hulk Hogan, Bobo Brazil,
Yeah,
all them great wrestlers.
Yeah.
That's who grandmothers know.
That's not good.
But these other guys, grandmothers, I mean, I try to put it simple to people who really love MMA, and I don't dislike MMA. I'm like I said, I'm a guy who believes that those guys, I'm glad they're getting paid. I'm happy, like tennis players, tennis and golf. I'm glad to see those people getting paid for what they did, because when we grew up, if you said in high school that you was going to play tennis, what? What? What's wrong with this guy? You move on down there, man. They thought you were funny. You know what I'm saying? You know, or carry a golf stick around or something like you. I mean, you was a different class guy. But the world in which we live today is a lot different. It's far different than what we grew up in. You know, same thing with our kids. This right here, I got to go, when something go wrong with my phone, I got to go to my 10-year-old son to get him to fix it. I don't know nothing. I'm clueless. You know what I'm saying? So we live in a different world in all facets of life today. We live in a different world in all facets.
Do you think that the MMA fighters would stand up and organize boxing like in May? Do you think they can handle it?
Organize it?
Like, no, if they were in a boxing match, say against you, do you think they can handle it without having to do grappling or anything like that?
No, and that's why they do. No, but that's why they do what they do. But yeah, but second, but to that point, I can't do what they do either.
Yeah.
If he get me a headlock, I'm done. You know,
He put you on the ground. And
yeah, that's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
Just recently, they were saying that Ronda Rousey
called
out Floyd Mayweather, said that she could kick his ass.
Well, she knows.
She's an MMA.
Ron. She's fortunately the best woman out there.
She said, you know, it's men and women in MMA. She said there should be no boundaries, that she'll fight any guy in MMA.
Well, but if Mayweather wanted to get an MMA octagon, she'd kill him. If she got in a boxing room, Mayweather would tear her apart. I mean, it would be fun.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
She's got no stand-up game for Mayweather.
Oh, no.
I don't even like Mayweather, but she's got no stand-up.
No, man, she's been doing it since she was 1 year old. She's been taking judo, karate, boxing.
Well, you know, the Mayweather conversation is, you know, is obviously a major topic all the time. You know what I'm saying? But you know, Mayweather's done a tremendous job in marketing himself, and doing what and getting to where he is today.
If he was a heavyweight, he would have a much wider audience. The problem is there's no personality anymore in the heavyweight game. Klitschko is not fun. He's not exciting. He's arguably the best heavyweight in the game. But there is nothing about his personality or his boxing that makes you go, well, let's get excited about Klitschko.
Well, and to your point, Mayweather is probably no different than that. The one thing that Mayweather does have going for himself is that, you know, I've said this to him. I almost signed Mayweather when he come out of the amateurs. He offered me, he wanted me to sign him as an amateur, and when he come out of the amateurs, he asked me for $400,000, and I took the $300,000 that I had left, and I bought a white boy out of South Africa by the name of Francois Botha. I don't know if you heard that. Remember Botha? But Botha at the time, the reason why I made that decision at the time that I did that is because Botha had 18 professional fights at that time. Mayweather hadn't had any pro fights at the time, and I felt that I could get there quicker with Botha than I could, and I did. Botha became one of the highest paid white heavyweights in history. He made $13 million as a heavyweight, as a white heavyweight, and so I made the right choice. But the reason why I did what I did is because in the world in which we live today, we have what they call a Muhammad Ali Act, and that's like in Washington with the government. They made these rules and regulations, and they called it the Muhammad Ali Act. Okay, And so when you have a problem with states, whether it's New York or Vegas or whatever, that Muhammad Ali Act comes into play. And what the Muhammad Ali Act came down on was what Arum and King were doing for years, were signing fighters and putting extensions on their contracts, okay, which gave them almost lifetime contracts with the fighters. And so the fighters weren't free to go and do what they want to do. So with the Muhammad Ali Act came into play, it eliminated that. So when you look at boxing today and you go and sign a young fighter today,
free agency clause.
It's a major problem. It's a major problem because it takes, if you look at this for what it really is, and I learned this as a manager, if you're a young fighter, whether you're Sugar Ray Leonard, whether you're Muhammad Ali or you're Mike Tyson, and Tyson was the one who did it quicker than anybody. He became the heavyweight champion quicker than anybody. You guys got to go?
No, they got to get the food.
Oh. So the Muhammad Ali Act, what the Muhammad Ali Act stands for is you can only sign a fighter for a 3-year period. And if you go to the record book and you look at all of these great fighters that were raised, Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Duran, you name them, you name the fighter. It took 2.5 to 3 years to raise them. So now you're in with it. So if I give the Mayweather $400,000, it's going to take me 2 to 3 years to raise them, right? Now after that 3rd year, that's when you really start to make the money from the fighter.
He's already signed another contract.
Pardon me?
Then he's already signed another contract.
Well, what happens is you raise him, you do all the dirty work, and what happens is now he becomes a free agent in the 3rd year. And Don King comes, or Arum comes, or some guy off the street comes and offers the guy $1 million to sign a contract. He's gone. So now, did I make the right decision when I said to Mayweather no? Yes, I made it, because guess what he did? Bob Arum raised him, made him world champion, right? And what did he do with Bob Arum? Huh?
Left him in the curb.
He left him at the curb. That's exactly right. Yeah. So I went with Francois Botha. I went with Botha, and I decided that was my meal ticket for a long time, and it was.
Are any of your children going into boxing? Any of your children, are they going to go into boxing?
Oh, my son! I have one son. He's not really interested in at this point in time right now. He's not really interested in boxing. Although I kind of like grab him at times and take him into the garage and teach him things, because what I don't want him to do is get pushed around in school. And
what
so
is he into? He's only 10. What is he into?
basketball. He's into basketball, baseball. He goes to school with his daughter. Yeah. But he's into that kind of stuff, and I don't press it upon him to be a fighter. I really don't press it upon him. But what I do press upon him is that he can't come home crying to me. You know what I'm saying? He can't come home crying to me. So he's got to either go to the duties, and we do little sessions in the garage. We do sessions where I hold the hand pads with him and let him punch. So he gets an idea that somebody does try to push him around. Pardon me?
He knows how to defend himself.
Yes. Well, he not yet, but he's getting there. Yeah, exactly. And I give him that, and I try to push towards him a little attitude. You know what I'm saying? You got to have a little attitude when you're a young kid. You got to have an attitude. You know what I'm saying?
Do you know John Jackson?
John, sure. The promoter in California?
In Seattle, yeah. Well, he's from Seattle.
Oh, you mean the fighter, John?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, I know John.
Yeah.
Yeah, good fighter.
Yeah.
Really a good fighter. Yeah.
Okay, unless anyone has any other questions, we need to wrap it up. The food has arrived. Any questions in California?
No.
Okay. So do you want to say anything about Ray Leonard? Anything happening in your future?
Oh boy. Yeah. We're on television, though, huh?
Not really. Just the rest of the world.
Yeah, me and Ray Leonard were really good friends coming up as amateurs. We stayed friends for a long, long time. In fact, we actually did a show together. We did a show. I took him to, we went to St. Thomas. When he had a promotional company at one time, Sugar Ray Leonard Inc. or something like that. he called me and wanted to do a couple fights with me, and I ended up taking him to the Virgin Islands. We went to the Virgin Islands together, and we did a showdown in the Virgin Islands. I got a buddy of mine who's a senator there for a long time, and we ended up doing a showdown in the Virgin Islands. And during that period of time, Ray Leonard learned that the guy who he was dealing with was robbing him, was robbing the shows, you know, because the guy had asked me, he asked me for some money. Oh, I'd already paid him the site fee for the shows, and he asked me for more money. And I said, well, listen, you already got paid the site fee. What do you need more money for? He said, well, this is for this, this, and the other. And I went and I told Ray, I said, listen, this guy, did you know that the guy was supposed to get another $150,000 for this? And he says, no. Come to find out, the guy was beating him, and then his company shut. I told him to get rid of this guy. I said, you got to get rid of this guy. And he didn't get rid of the guy. And the company shut down. So recently, he called me again, and he had an idea, and you guys are going to be some of the first people to know. A few other people know. But it's not a big secret anyway. It's not a big secret. But we are getting ready to launch a tour. And in that tour is going to be what they call the Four Kings. And that's Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, and Tommy Hearns. And I put together a 27, I put together a 27 country tour for Mike Tyson when he retired. And Tyson got in trouble right before we did one of the fights. That's right. We did one of the fights in Youngstown, Ohio, and then Tyson got in trouble.
Was this in Arizona?
Yeah, when he got in trouble in Arizona, and it shut the tour down. It shut the tour down worldwide. Mr. Mandela was so angry with Tyson. It was incredible. He wanted to choke him, but Tyson got in trouble, and they pulled his passport. In fact, how many of you guys know? How many of you know about? You ever heard of a Maybach?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had no idea what a Maybach was. Yeah, I had no idea what it was until I signed Tyson to the tour contract, and I give him $100,000. He come back to me a couple of days later. He says, "Here's the $100,000. I don't want the $100,000." I said, "Oh, really? No shit. You do this for nothing." I said, "No. I want you to buy me a Maybach." And I said, "A Maybach? What the hell's a Maybach?" He says, "Oh, it's a Mercedes car." And this and that. So I called. I said, "Oh, Mercedes. That's okay." So I'm figuring I'm going to save some money. Yeah, I figured I was going to save some money. So I called this guy Rex over at the Mercedes place. I said, "Rex, tell me." I said, "What the hell's a Maybach?" He said, "Sterling, what do you want with a Maybach?" I said, "I don't want a Maybach. Tyson wants a Maybach." He said, "What's he want with a Maybach?" I said, "Well, what is a Maybach?" He said, "It's like a short limousine." And I said, "Well, what's it cost?" He goes, "I got one here right now. You can come and get it for $400,000. But anyway, let me tell you, when he asked me for that Maybach, I get a phone call from a guy named Saka Kiba, who, you remember a company called Pride? Fighting Pride.
Yeah.
Pride. Well,
he used to do Muay Thai, and then they started doing MMA later on.
Pride became the #1 mixed martial arts company in the world. They're out of Japan. The day after that happened, Tyson asked me for that Maybach. The guy from Japan, his name is Mr. Saka Kiba. Saka Kiba called me on the phone. He goes, "Hey, Sterling, I hear you got those dates with Tyson. I want to use Tyson on some of my shows." I said, "Tyson ain't going to fight anymore." He says, "No, I want you to do the exhibitions on my shows." And I ended up making a deal with Saka Kiba for like 22. For more than that. I made a deal with him for like 15 fights, 15 shows for Tyson. And he gave me $2.5 million per show for Tyson to fight on the show. So I was able to go buy. In fact, when I went to buy the Maybach, I told Rex, I said, "Listen, you see that? What is that?" I said, "What is that?" It was like a 550 or something, some kind of new Mercedes they had at the time. I said, "Throw that in too." I said, "Tyson's gonna love it," because I told my brother, I said, "Listen, I'm gonna get him to extend," because we had a 15-fight agreement. And I said, I figured I'd go back to Tyson because Saka Kiba wanted even more dates than the 15 dates that I had. He wanted even more. And I said, shit, 2.5 million. I said, look here. I said, I said, put that, I told Rex, give him that car right there. He said, Sterling, that car is $160,000. Give it to him. Buy that too. I said, put that on the list. So when Tyson, I told Tyson to meet me at the Mercedes place that afternoon, and he says, "Oh, Sterling, I love this Maybach. I love it." I said, what about I said, "You see that black Mercedes over there?" I said, "What do you think of that right there?" Boy, that looks. He said, "But I want this." I said, "No, you." I said, "Look, but forget about this Maybach. Do you like that car?" I said, "Do you like that car?" He said, "Yeah, I loved it. It's beautiful." He said, "But I don't. I just wanted the Mercedes." I said, "Do you want that one too?" He said, "You gonna get it for me? You paying for it?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I already bought it." I said, "I already bought it." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, but there's only one catch." He said, "What's that?" I said, "You gotta give me 20 more dates." And he gave them to me.
Okay, well, thank you, Sterling.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Oh, God.
Okay, so we're all going to have lunch. You can have a chat with Sterling also and get to meet him. Thank you in California. And next week, everybody will see you again.
Bye.
Thank you.